I do have a title for this, and it is from the book of Hebrews. And I'm just taking my title from a verse. It's from Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 2. And it's this way: "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross." For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for this holiday, this time to worship you and admire the fact that you humbled yourself as a man. You let your son be born, live, and die for our salvation. What an amazing plan from the foundations of the earth. God, we are so grateful. Father, I'm thankful that your message gets preached a little bit more during this season. And I pray that you would give us the boldness to be responsive to your Holy Spirit when he nudges us to just say a few extra things here and there, or do a few extra things here and there during this season, Father. The doors are open. And we praise you for that. In Jesus' name. Mariah asked me an interesting question. I wanted to bring the stool up for a couple of reasons. One, so I can sit and kind of tell a couple of stories. And two, because I like to do communion down here where we're sharing it together. So. But Mariah asked an interesting question this week. She said, "Dad, what are your favorite Christmas gifts you've ever received?"
Aww.
And, you know, I'm 53 now, and I've got a lot of Christmases to remember from. But I'll tell you something strange about me. In the moment, I couldn't think of any gifts I'd ever received. And I sat there and thought a little bit, and one came to mind. I'm going to tell you about that one, and some of you have heard it before. And that was it. For the last 2 days or whatever it's been, that's the only one I can think of that I ever received on Christmas. So what does that tell you? It means if you ever bought me something for Christmas, it had zero impact. You know what I'm saying? There are different personality types and people in the world. And there's a great book by Chapman and these guys about the 5 love languages. How we all give and receive love in different ways. You know, some people, gifts mean a whole lot. And it changes their world. And they have an amazing impact. And a lot of times, the gifts that change people, or sometimes you can identify someone's love language by their behavior. For instance, Mariah, she's all about gifts. Okay? And it doesn't have to be diamond rings. It doesn't have to be expensive. Matter of fact, it's better if you make it. It could be a piece of yarn glued onto a piece of paper in the shape of a heart that says, "I love you." And Mariah will remember it, and it's in her room. Somewhere. Can't tell you where, because of all the things you've given her are still there, and they're there. And when we go through her room and we try to clean it up, and we throw this, "No, you cannot throw that away. Martha gave that to me 22 years ago, and it was my birthday, and you know." That's just not me. And so other people, it's words of affirmations, you know, just hearing praise from one another, getting a compliment. How about the kid that grows up with the dad that never compliments him? And then the dad finally busts out and says, "Son, you done good." Or that moment is etched in his brain or her brain forever. And so when they get a job later in life and the boss, you know, maybe doesn't give too many compliments, but one day the boss says, "You know, I'm sure glad I hired you." Boy, it fuels them for the next 10 years of loyalty in that work environment. We're just all wired differently. And I'm not wired to gifts. So in reality, I've only been able, since Mariah asked me that question, to remember 2 gifts. And if you prompted me, if the kids prompted me, "Dad, do you remember when you got this?" I'm sure that it would come back. So it's not like it's gone. It's just not in that shelf that lodges as life impacting. And I don't think that's criminal. For some of you, you might be hurt by me telling you that. And I don't think you should be. We're all just, some people it's acts of service. Boy, what so-and-so did for me during the holiday. I wasn't feeling well and they came and cooked the turkey, or, different things in life. And Davine falls more towards the acts of service thing. And so when people serve her or do things, it floors her. It really impacts her. And so there are different things. And if you're interested about that, like I said, there's a great book called The Five Love Languages. It's worth your time to read. So the first gift, it was Christmas, and I lived in the city at that time. In my first years of life, we lived in a pretty significant city in California called Orange. And we lived on a cul-de-sac. My dad was in the heyday of his career, and a cul-de-sac shaped like a thermometer, an old-fashioned thermometer, and we had that center house at the end of the cul-de-sac. And, the sewage company had their sewage plate at the end of the thermometer, at the end of the thermometer there on the road, and we had that painted. That was home plate. And then we had some black bases painted in first and third, and then one for second base. And we played baseball growing up on that thermometer, and everybody knew you had to be a center field hitter or else you might get in trouble. And we learned how to be, all of us learned on the block, learned how to be center field hitters. I believe there were 16 or 17 houses on the block. I want to say 16. I always remember 16, but maybe we were the 17th. I'm not sure because it was very symmetrical. And so the other thing we did besides baseball was we played smash-up derby with our big wheels. And I don't know about kids today whether they get big wheels or not, or when you live in the country maybe you don't get those too much because you get real tractors, But us city kids, we have these plastic, things you sit on, and they have big fat tires in the back and usually one wheel in the front. And we would play smash-up derby, and it was the funnest thing. And 16 houses, it was family type of block, lots of kids. There was always 15, 20 kids, and there were plenty of friends to be made. There were enough kids that you could always have friends and enemies on the same block. I mean, it was amazing. We'd have our smash-up derby contest, and there would be big wheels out there, and boom, boom, boom. And I had a dream that I would get the green machine. And the green machine was not just any big wheel. It was 4 wheels, and it had like a gear, and you pedal it, and it was just, and I knew if I had the green machine, I would be the killer guy for the smash-up derby. And I got the green machine one Christmas, and I remember that gift. For whatever reason. Now, what does that tell you about my psychology? I'm not too sure, but I remember my first green machine too.
Luckily, you weren't on the same block.
So, we were not on the same block. I'll leave the green machine in a second, but one of the advantages of the green machine, the big wheel, the pedals were on the front tire, okay? Like a chopper, kind of reverse chopper, like a tricycle. And if you were in Smash-Up Derby and somebody came with their big wheel and hit you in the side, your legs are unprotected. But in the green machine, all of a sudden, you got 4 tires and your legs are protected. So you could just be mean and not even worry about getting the other people flying. So that was a gift. Second gift was a change in life. So my parents, when I was 9, my dad pursued his dream to move to the mountains. And he was an artist, and he painted, and he wanted to be closer to nature, and his dad had built a house up there in the mountains, and so we moved to Big Bear, which was a very small town, elevation basically 8,000 feet, with mountains extending to 11,000, and we learned the life of snow and ruggedness, and that's why I like West Virginia so much. I always tease about West Virginians, but it's truly because I'm jealous that I'm not living there. But don't worry, I'll still start teasing about how you married your brother's aunt's sister. But at any rate, so we moved to the mountains, and growing up in the city, we always had a fake tree. And that's all we had, and Mom and Dad kept it in this old box, and it got duct taped and it was reused. That's not the right one, but mine had 4 wheels. Yeah, but that is a big wheel, but mine had 4. That would not have sufficed. That would not have been remembered. I mean,
Dad would have beat that one.
that would have been a forgotten gift. So we moved to the mountains, and the fig tree was cool. You know, the kind where you put every single branch in on the pole, and it takes forever because it's not now. There's nothing good about it. It's the old days, and you got to figure out, okay, that branch is 32 inches, this one's 31 and a half, and that one's 30, and this one's 29 and a half, and you got to make sure that they all come in. And you wished that last year you wouldn't have been in such a hurry to put the tree away because you didn't put all the branches in any kind of sense of order. But it was kind of a cool memory anyway, regardless, because it's your Christmas and it's fun. And you put the tree together, and that was a huge symbol of life. And I can still smell the plastic tree. Is that weird or what? I can still smell it, and I have something. No. That's all I can smell. So, I don't know what your Christmas traditions are, but they become you. They become special, and they're cherished, and you enjoy them. You move to the mountains. And my brother Mike didn't move with us. Now, remember, Mike is, those of you who met him, he's 10 years older than me. So, he got married when he was 18, and we moved to the mountains when I was 9. Therefore, he was already married a year and out of the house. And so my transition of life and my character and all these formidable years that came in my teen years were all developed in a world that was different than the world I started with. And this new world was an adventure. It was coyotes, bears. I mean, we lived in Big Bear. You could have a bear come onto your property and dig in your trash can. You know, I tell people about the Wild Burros. It was an abandoned gold mining town. And so when they left off trying to find gold in their hills, they also left their mules, and those mules reproduced, and we had wild burros all over the place. It was like you have deer. I mean, we had deer too, but I mean, it was amazing. So there were lots of cool memories that the forest was my backyard. We lived on the edge of the national forest. It didn't matter that we didn't have a backyard in the lot plan, because I had miles and 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 miles of forest. Huge forest. You could certainly get lost. And I got a dog, and we didn't have to have a fence for our yard, and chasing coyotes. And so it's Christmas time, and Uncle Mike comes. He's not, I don't know if I would call him Uncle Mike then, because I didn't have any kids. So Mike would come, and Mike was like, you guys need to get a real Christmas tree. And I just never had it. And so Mom and Dad we went through some budgeting times those years. Things got a little tougher than when we were living high on the hog in Orange County. Mom went to work, it got so bad, And it was different. My dad pursued the dream to live near the art that he wanted to paint, but in the matter of doing that, he lost his market. Because you gotta, many jobs, they're successful because they're in the city where the market is. And so the budget didn't have a plan for buying a Christmas tree. But Mike, being who Mike is, said, we'll go get one. So we went out, and it was snowing. And it was definitely snow. I mean, like already 2 feet on the ground, maybe we'll see where this storm goes. And went up on Onyx Summit, and that's illegal. You might think, well, there's plenty of trees, why not go get one? Well, because you're not supposed to. But anyway, and so we can't really get off the road to go get our tree, because once you're off the road, you're stuck. You're not going to get back on the road. You don't want to get off the road. It's enough snow that they don't plow the pavement. Because if you plow the pavement, then you'll just get dry ice, and that's worse. So you plow to a level in which chains will function. You put tire chains on your car, and then you'll have grip. And so we were up at the top of Onyx Summit, which is 8,443 feet. And it's the one road in to the backside of the mountain. And there's not a lot of people coming at that time. It's nighttime, and it's Christmas week, and so Mike gets the idea that we're going to go get a tree from the top of Onyx Summit. So we find our little place to pull off on the top of Onyx Summit, and we find the tree, and we've scouted around, tromping in the snow, unprepared, and there's the tree, and we're up there, and we're trying to saw it down with the improper tool, probably a framing saw or something that was not the kind of thing you'd want to use. And here comes Carlos.
How old are you?
And I'm 10 or 11, 12, I don't know. I'm in the adventure. And Mike's trying to saw the tree, and then the car's coming, and he's like, "Get down, everybody get down!" We're all out in the snow. Hoping the car will pass and not wonder why there's another vehicle parked on the side of the road where there's, usually no one's supposed to park. Sure went by, sawing again. Okay, oh, here comes the plow, get down, get down, get down! And we got our first fresh Christmas tree, Mom. You probably didn't know where it came from. Poor Mom, she gets to hear so many sins that I confess from this area. And sometimes it's the first time she heard it. This is probably the first time my mom has ever heard this story. So we came home with the tree and it was awesome. That's Christmas gift number 2. Number 3, of course that one wasn't personal, was we again had entered a period of poverty in our life. And one of my favorite people in my life was Aunt Helen. And she wasn't my aunt. Honestly, I'm not even sure how she related to the family, if she was related. Maybe she was our third cousin's cousin from West Virginia. But at any rate, Aunt Helen was cool. She was wealthier. I don't know how wealthy, but she carried herself a little wealthier. She's the kind of woman in those days that and those of us that are older, you'd think of her with pale skin, dark hair, and one of those cigarette holders. You know those long, narrow cigarette holders, and then you put your cigarette in the end. You got to be older to remember that. So Aunt Helen sometimes smelled like cigarettes, but it didn't matter to us kids because she was fun. She always had candy or something to share with us. She had an amazing Jordan, and she was jolly and just fun to be around. No offense, this is actually said with admiration. She reminded me, sorry. She reminds me of you, Amanda. She reminds me of Amanda. Because she, I don't know if you ever noticed, there's just some people in life kids want to be around, all right? And they're fun. And so that was Aunt Helen. Well, Aunt Helen died this Christmas season, or a little prior to. Maybe it was a few months before Christmas, and then they were dealing with her stuff. And so it came down to we got some things. We got her organ, which was way cool because my mom could play. She learned playing the piano, but it was an organ, and we all learned to make the. We got the organ, and it was awesome. And then the other thing that was given to us was Aunt Helen's mink coat. Well, of course, it was kind of old, and none of us were going to wear a mink coat in the mountains, and we were hillbilly rednecks. It just wasn't going to happen. Christmas time came, and Mom informed me that there would be no purchasing of gifts. The family could not afford to buy gifts. And so what we were doing for Christmas is we were making gifts for one another. And so for me, I took a coffee can and I put material around it, something like Mariah would do. And I decorated this coffee can, and that would be a holder for my dad's brushes, because he was an artist, a painter. And so that's what I did for him. And I was young enough, I thought that was pretty cool. Well, Mom cut up the mink coat, and she made these fur hats out of it, with scraps of leather and mink, and the mink on the inside, and and they were marvelous. And she made 3 of them. One for me, one for Mike. Mike didn't live with us, but I think we got it to him. And one for Greg. And they were all just a little bit different. I'll tell you what, that mink hat. So that's, when Mariah asked me, what gift do you remember? That's the one that came in my head immediately. And I was like, that's the gift. She asked, what was your favorite gift of all time in all your Christmases? This was it. This was the favorite gift. And for 100 reasons. And, you get to school and kids are like, what'd you get for Christmas? And you say, well, they say, I got a car. I start to remember the mink hat must have happened near high schoolish because there were some cars in the kids' gifts. Must have been around 15 or 14 or something. And They're like, well, what'd you get? I'm like, I got a mink hat. And when kids look at you, they're like, what are you talking about? And I did my best, which wasn't a struggle, but to let them know that it was priceless to me, that it meant something. It was real. And for the joy before him, he endured the cross. How much we learn by what we suffer versus what you learn just because you're taught it or it comes by the wayside. You know, when you want something bad enough, you'll pay a high price for it. This passage in Hebrews starts off, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, the Hebrew author has just gone through a great list of men and women of faith who made huge sacrifices to demonstrate their faith in God. And he ends that list of people and examples to say, we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, these amazing people that had such faith. Let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. Looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for sake of the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. You know, the joy set before him, he endured the cross. It's a basic principle, especially in the athletics world, no pain, no gain. You know, there are things that in life, if you want to achieve them, you set yourself up for the struggle. It could be school itself, you know, a degree or maybe saving up for something you want to buy, and therefore you have to neglect a lot of things that you would normally buy because you don't have enough money to do both, and therefore you go through a stage of pain to get the gain. And here the scriptures are telling us that Jesus had this picture of a reward, this joy. He calls it joy. The joy set before him. He would endure the cross. You know, our little baby in the manger, Jesus. It's interesting, you know. I think about Jesus and the fact that he's God, wrapped in flesh, born as a baby. And, you know, the Bible in Hebrews 5:8 says that he had to endure suffering to learn obedience. Just like us in Hebrews 5:8. It teaches us that he learned, it's worth reading, I guess I'll grab it. It says, although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And having been made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation. You know, it's easy to think, you know, there's that little Jesus in the crib. I mean, he's God, right? So everything ahead of him is easy. It's a cakewalk because he's God. I mean, like, he knows. It's funny. Did he shut himself off when Mary cooed at him and said, "Oh, sweet little baby"? Did he shut himself off? Mom, could you chill a little bit? I mean, what if you would have answered like that? You know, that would have been really scary. No, he lived it out. He lived out his manhood. You know, the funny thing is the Quran has him doing that. You know, man and his weird doctrines spins off strange ideas about Jesus, but he lives it out. He lives it out for 30 years. And we know there are some little peaks of light in it, like at his bar mitzvah age, he down in Jerusalem, and the crew leaves town as they head back to Nazareth. They realize Jesus is gone. They go looking for him. They find him in the temple, sitting with the rabbis and the teachers of the law, just blowing them away with his knowledge. So we know that he was who he was, and yet he reserved that inside of him. And so there's a part of us that might say, well, he could do all that because he was God. We almost belittle his suffering. We almost say, well, the reason he could go through all that is because he was God. But if he had to feel what I feel like, if he had to suffer the way I suffer, I don't have the magic juice or the syrup in the back. If he had to feel the pain I go through, and we try to unconsciously accuse God of not actually being able to relate to our weaknesses. But the scriptures tell us just the opposite. They tell us that he relates to our weaknesses and that he became a man so that he could relate to your weaknesses. And so here is Jesus going through these years. Can you imagine 30 years? In some ways, his pain and his struggle was harder than anything that we would go through. Because locked in within him is the desire to get the ball rolling. He's been dreaming and planning this for centuries, for thousands of years. And he's in the moment, and it's the time, and you talk about the time is not right yet. It's almost the time. We're getting really close, really close. It's kind of like kids with Christmas again. It's really close, and they want to open those presents, but it's not Christmas. It's not time to open them yet. It might even be Christmas morning. You might be saying, nope, we don't open presents until 8 a.m. And they're ready, and they're eager, and here comes Mom. Jesus, these people are out of line. It's time for you to keep the party going. Mom, it's not my time yet. Right on the cusp of his time, he's being asked to reveal who he is, to start operating in his mission. But it's not time yet, but he does it for his mom's sake, which is cool. Kind of shows you some of the struggle. And there's another story. So here's this Jesus. This no pain, no gain thing is every day. You can sprint or you can marathon. If you're a sprinter, you want to move fast and get your reward. If you're a marathoner, you better reserve your fuel. Because if you start out with a sprint, you won't be finished. And so, in the long run, this is a marathon for God. He's been planning this forever. And in our life, how often we just want to sprint. I want to get the pain over with. I want to get the struggle away from me, and I want to get the reward. As a matter of fact, that's the best advertising technique they keep using for everything we buy. This will make your life easier. That's what sells well. Easier, 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 easier. Easier weight loss, easier, it can be a quality easier. This product, you'll never have to buy another one. It'll make your life easier. Jesus didn't buy the easy path. He chose the marathon. It says that, well, it recommends that we with endurance, marathon, run this race. Well, to the Greek word there, aporontes, means fix your gaze on Jesus. If you would see how he ran his race, if you'd fix your gaze on him, I call it tunnel vision. If you would get tunnel vision for Jesus, then everything else around you kind of fades off. I don't know if you've ever had tunnel vision. I've certainly had it a few times. You get it. I think it's chemistry. I think it's actually not just psychological. I think it's your body. Wartime soldiers and people in conflict often get it. And you're in a moment in which your body says, that's the enemy. And all of a sudden, you have no peripheral vision. They can come to you and interview you after the fight and say, what happened? And did you see the person on the left or the right? And they will say, I saw no one on my left or the right. Just saw that person. That's tunnel vision. Here the author is telling you, you've got to, Christian, get tunnel vision for Jesus. If you're going to finish this race and do it right, you've got to fix your gaze on Jesus. You're not going to fix your gaze on the green machine. And boy, did that Christmas tree smell good, Mom, when we had a real tree in the house. And guess what happened to Jeff after that? Never had a fake tree since. Never had one since. I think even Nadine wanted to bring a fake tree into our life. She's like, no, I didn't. We've been getting that real tree, and I'm not appreciative of the fake tree, real tree. You can keep whatever tree makes your holiday. He's the founder, it says, and the perfecter of our faith. The beginning and the ending. There's some Greek words here. In the beginning. Famous verse, right? Where do we get that phrase? In the beginning. Genesis 1:1 and
John
1:1. Okay. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And here it's saying He is the beginning. He's the founder. He's the captain. He's where it all starts. And He's the ending. The perfecter. It's a Greek word that means to be complete. It's like you finished the puzzle. It's perfect now. Because it's complete. And He's that perfecter of the faith. And because of the joy set before Him. What? Joy. What joy? What joy was set before Him to endure the cross?
The conflict of loving and merciful, but He was also holy.
There is a conflict there.
Yeah, and that had to be satisfied so that He could have us there.
The us.
Us.
The us. That is His joy. I think Sarah said it. Christmas. Just want to get the whole family together. The work that women and men, but women especially, do to make their holidays wonderful. It's a lot of pain for a tiny bit of gain. But the joy set before them is bringing their family together in one place. I mean, Cy said it. He said, I hope my son comes home tonight. The joy set before him is worth all kinds of stuff. You will make all kinds of sacrifices. You will do all kinds of absurd things for this little tiny moment of joy. God has a tiny moment of joy. And it's you. Just one more verse I want to share with you. And it comes from His last meal with the disciples in Luke. I took my bookmark out apparently. Oh, no, I didn't. Luke chapter 22 and verse 15. He says to His disciples, it's the Last Supper, it's the Passover meal, and He says to them, in verse 15 of Luke chapter 22, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. He makes it clear, I've been longing to have this meal with you. I've been desiring it for a long time. This has been in my mind from the beginning. To sit down and have this meal with you. And this one, right before I suffer. And boy, all the suffering he went through, just being ridiculed or criticized or persecuted verbally by the religious people of this world. Those who were His own did not receive Him. He was rejected by His own. He'd already suffered a lot, but He knew that after Gethsemane, He was going to head to the cross, and the amount of suffering that He was facing for man to endure is uncanny. The cross, the beating, the whipping, the crucifixion, all of it is going to be repelling. It's going to be awful. It's going to be the worst kind of death. And he's sitting there thinking, man, I've been waiting for this meal. I got the suffering thing coming, but I have longed to have this meal with you before I suffer. I just think it's amazing. Because his love is demonstrated to this crazy, uncanny level. That everything he goes through is because of you. And you. And you. He did it for you. And then there would, when the revelation of that really hits you, when that level of love really falls on you, there's no way but to say, man, I love you. Man, Lord, you're amazing. It makes your mom look like you. The level of service mom does at Christmas, or the way your family breaks their back to make it happen, it makes that look minute when you see the reality of it in Christ. I mean, we all appreciate our families that come together for the holidays and do what they do and bring the special cranberry sauce or whatever thing they do to contribute to it to make it special. And we look for it, we long for it for a whole year, and we're like, yeah, you're going to bring that, right? Yeah, I'm going to bring that. Oh yeah, because you wouldn't be welcome if you didn't. No, we just put such emphasis in these memories. And when you see it in Christ, you're like, wow, we love him because he first loved us. And I would beg to say, if you don't love him yet, and you don't have a relationship with Christ yet, it's because you just haven't seen it yet. You're like the guy who goes to the Christmas meal who has no idea the amount of effort that was put in to make it happen. You're like the guy in the fall that's completely disengaged with the reality around you to know the level of sacrifice people have put into the event that you have belittled. And that's the person who has no relationship with Christ, because they haven't seen his love yet. And so this morning I'm appealing to you, if you're one of those, to take a moment and say, Lord, help me see your love. Lord, help me open my eyes. Help me for this moment to see the level of your love for me, because I want to. And believe me, God honors every good prayer.
Yes.
And he's going to honor that one.
Yep.
And for those of you like me that are overwhelmed already by the love of Christ, that night at the meal, he said, I long to eat it with you. And he holds up what had been a tradition for already a few thousand years, and symbolized the covenant that the Jews had made under the leadership of Moses. And that covenant was, among other things, the Ten Commandments and a relationship with God. And Jesus, in that moment, says, there's a new covenant. And from now on, what was slavery to you and symbolized your tearing away from the slavery of the world in Egypt is now my broken body. Broken for you. And a slavery, in this case, is going to be forgiveness from sin. But through him and his blood, which was poured out for you, will be man's covenant in a new way that allows him to be set free from the slavery of sin and forgiven by the blood of Jesus. And he's getting ready to lay it down. And he has him take the meal. He's taken it now. He's laid it down, and they've had the meal. And he tells them, I won't do it again. I'll never do it again until I do it with you in my Father's kingdom. That is it on that. And so every time we do this, we do it in remembrance of him. We do it in remembrance of his broken body, of the blood he shed, of the love he has for us, and the forgiveness. I'll tell you what, Jesus has tunnel vision
Yes.
for you. His tunnel vision is staring straight back. Father, thank you for your love. No greater love has anyone in this that he laid down his life for his friends. Please protect